Hi, this is Privateer Station, and this morning we'll bring you day 400 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Olexiy Arestovych, and Russian opposition politician Mark Feygin. Special thanks go to Alan Harvey for supporting our show. And with that, day 400. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It is Thursday, March 30th. Time is 6 minutes past 10 p.m. We apologize for running a bit late today, circumstances, and we're discussing day 400 of this war with Olexiy Arestovych. Good evening, Olexiy. Good evening, Mark. We have 120,000 watching us live, about 20-something thousand click the like button. Not enough. Please continue clicking that. That's important. If you can bother yourself to click that like button, that is really appreciated. And share links to that stream in your social media as well. If you have not subscribed yet, please do so to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English. Alright, so this is anniversarial. It's not a good word for that, for the war date, but number 400 is meaningful. Let's start with the main topic. What's the main conclusion, do you think, we can make on the day 400, and what will be the end of it? The main thing at day 400, let me think. One should understand when there is a threat of war to the world. Smart people come out, smart people like you and me come out to the screens and say this war is completely illogical. It goes against the real interests of both parties. There is no need to start it. There is no capability to start it. And that's where the sides and commentators should pause here, and most of them don't. They say that means the war will not start because of everything said earlier. However, most wars are illogical. They shouldn't have happened. The most illogical war that shouldn't have happened, and people are still arguing about, for example, reasons of the stupidest of all stupid wars, the one that changed the character of our civilization, and it still gives our civilization hiccups, was the First World War. It was between three cousins: German Emperor, British Emperor, and Russian Emperor. They even looked alike to a degree. They had the same grandma, Queen Victoria, and one could not think of a crazier event, and yet it happened. And later, of course, you can logicize that Germans want colonies, Russians want trade, and yeah, that's all finding reasons after the event. But what it led to, a civilizational catastrophe, a change of how the world was developing. Same with this war. On all logical measures, it shouldn't have happened. Let's follow some logic. Chechnya, I think, is 17,000 square kilometers, together with Ingushetia, actually. But it's literally half of Kiev district. To fight there, Russian army brought 400,000 troops. Spilled a lot of blood, lost the first round. Here, with the same size army, they decided to occupy a country in Europe, which is roughly about the size of France, actually a little bigger. So before, they barely managed to take Grozny and Chechnya with the same forces. Is it logical, you think? Soviet Union, to take Ukraine back from Wehrmacht, created a 4 million army to even try. And here they decided to go with a tenth of it. All right. They had a chance to cut off our group on the east, where we were holding the border. If they would do a pincer movement to the west of Kharkov, and at the bottom in Kherson or Zaporozhye. That would really drop Ukraine into political crisis. We lose connection with most of our armed forces, and then in that political noise, they can dethrone the government, they can place their own people of influence in power. They surround 80,000 group of our fighters that was there, so there'd be a lot of shame, national woes, looking for national guilt, and so on. And pro-Russian government would be in Kiev very quickly. The West would not be able to even say anything, and they would not have time to do sanctions or support or whatever. And yet, instead of doing this operation, they followed something crazy. They actually decided to attack Ukraine on 6 different directions. The war is still going, and we already see that they will be totally annihilated in this war. Another thing, they shot us up with 5,000 missiles. If they were successful, they would be something. But first they were hitting military targets, they were hitting airports, they were hitting electrical infrastructure, they were hitting bridges. They were trying to destroy everything they could, and they dumped tens of billions of dollars in the wind. This is illogical. After the third of that campaign, maybe after the 5th barrage of these missiles, you could also already see that it's useless. It's wasting a ton of money without achieving the desired result, but they keep doing it. And this is the collection of madness that they've done already and continue doing. If somebody would be told before the war of that, people would laugh in your face and say, well, they're not idiots to do that. Or the ones who are doing it would laugh in your face and say, well, no, I'm not an idiot. But one should understand that everything is like it is. I actually remember I left my family in Kiev, my relatives in Kiev, and a nephew of mine actually was in the occupied territory because he was a doctor and he happened to be there. I did not even believe in that operation around Kiev. What did I believe in? I knew they had troops in Belarus. I thought they will enter maybe 5-10 miles off the border to make us keep a military group up in Kiev, and to not let it be sent to the south or to the east where the actual front would be raging. So I totally did not believe the madness of this operation, that they will even attempt to attack Kiev. And when I saw them doing it, I understood that we're dealing with idiots. It did cost us a lot. Their attempt to take Kiev, it did cost us a lot to fend off, but it was totally logical. And the art of politician is to stop early enough when you see irrational elements unfolding as a result of your actions, and or as a result of possible actions of somebody you're analyzing. And that's where you need to look at that and say, yeah, this looks illogical, this doesn't make sense, but you have to stop at this place and do not predict that it will not happen, because the conclusion is perhaps it'll happen, but if so, it will be a complete crazy event. And the world is often a mad world. It is influenced by irrational waves that everyone can explain post factum, but is very difficult to use for prediction, especially for those who do not believe in collective subconsciousness. Although they could have asked Napoleon, because when he was asked, where you concocting your plans from, he said a famous phrase that I'm making my plans out of the dreams of my sleeping soldiers. Right, Olexiy, I think Jung was the one who legitimized that approach, right, about the collective subconsciousness. About 300,000 are with us already. Speaking of prognostications, we will talk about that more. But for now, let's also take a look at the front. Since our remarkable last stream, there are some things that happened and need discussing that deserve to be addressed on day 400 of this war. Let's take a look at the map. If it is changing, let's take a look at Bakhmut. We have two hottest spots, Avdiivka and Bakhmut. That's where the concentration is the heaviest. Of course, they're trying to move near Vuhledar, they're trying to move from Rubezhny to Liman, and there are some activities there. But we understand that their contention point is Bakhmut. Yesterday, our general command said that they indeed push a little in Bakhmut. But today, the official information, unofficial information too, confirms that there is heavy fighting there, but we're still holding. And the enemy are saying that our military forces are counterattacking in different places and rather often. So we can say that situation is difficult, it's hard, it's stable and difficult. Same in Avdiivka, they're trying to surround it from the north and from the south and force us to leave it. And we're holding. But overall, the situation did not change much on the front, because they're still complaining about the lack of shells, artillery shells, about dogged resistance of Ukraine military, that there are too many Ukrainians on the front, and it's very difficult for them to do anything. And there were several notable specialists and experts and politicians who mentioned that Bakhmut is a trap for Russian, including Austin, that Bakhmut is a trap for Russian military, that there are still about 6,000 Wagners and about 20,000 Russian cadre troops storming it. That this spot attracts these forces and doesn't let them be deployed elsewhere. So this story is important, it's still ongoing, and we still don't know how it will conclude. Near Bakhmut, our president did come out and say that if we give Bakhmut easily, they will sell it to our allies and to the world as their victory, and we need to do everything to prevent that from happening. We need to keep the ones wavering that in understanding that Ukraine actually is strong in defending our positions and in counteroffensive. And Russian side, of course, wants to prove that they have not lost, and not everything is so simple, and the war can continue, and look, we're wasting thousands of lives, but we're still taking cities, and we need to sit down and negotiate. And their task is basically to sit down at the table and try to negotiate before our counteroffensive. Because before that, it is one story, and after that counteroffensive, they won't even be able to sit down, and the terms will change, of course. All right. We've got more people pouring into our stream. Please click that like button. I see additional 250 overall joining us from the beginning. And let's move on to the next topic. Next one is detaining in Yekaterinburg. It's not a direct matter related to war, but I think it is related. American journalist that works for Wall Street Journal was detained in Yekaterinburg and accused in being a foreign spy. I have some experience defending journalists. Roman Sushenko, he was a correspondent and he was taken in 2016 and exchanged back in 2019. This was a Ukrainian journalist who was exchanged. And here it's a different matter slightly. It is American journalist. We see that something is happening. And of course, we understand that journalist can be an agent, same as a diplomat, right? Yours and ours, they all often do different other duties. Moscow agents working under the cover of other information agencies working in Washington and other places. I don't know. Maybe Grishkovich is not even an agent, but it's usually a parity, right? So after you take one like that, there are options for the other side to take Russian media specialists working abroad. But in any case, Russia decided to detain him. They are probably going to keep him in Lefortovo, that's KGB prison, and they're accusing him about researching into industrial military complex. But he was doing journalist research, and mostly for one of focal points was Wagner troops research. Of course, doing that in the conditions of war in Russia, that's a very risky proposition. But what consequences do you see? I already see Blinken made a statement. I think Biden will and others will chime in soon. Although Blinken did mention that all US citizens need to leave Russia immediately. Before that, remember, Mark, there was a downing of a drone, downing of a UAV. They're trying to probe the degree of decisiveness of the United States. They are progressing in their probing. How far can they go? How far can they provoke? Because it elevates the mood in the patriotic society of Russia, the ones supporting the ideas and Putin. And it shows to the countries that have not made a decision yet that, look, we are still nibbling US butt here and they're not doing anything. But there could be some other factor that we don't know. Perhaps somebody was taken in the United States or somewhere else. That's what the United States can influence a lot. And they could have taken this guy for an exchange. Because one of them spilled, I'm trying to remember, either a United Nations representative or something. I think it was Peskov, actually. He mentioned that we're not talking about exchange yet. And that was an interesting line, because people don't even know who else was captured or what is the story. But right up there is that line that he brought up. Okay, so you think that likely isn't for exchange, or that can lead to some escalation? It's not even drone, Mark. It's capturing a journalist. That's a whole other story. That's a wholly thing that you shouldn't be doing. Right, journalists is a separate issue. But we'll see. It's generally a favorable outcome for us. It diminishes the number of wavering of people who are saying that, oh, it's not so one-sided, it's not so simple. Perhaps we should not be aiding Ukraine. Here, US citizens are being detained, the ones working for Wall Street Journal, and we do need to react to that somehow. So each step of Putin's administration like that, it diminishes the window of opportunity for those who are saying it's not so simple to continue saying that. Because now their opponents have a couple very good arguments. Look, they're shooting down our drones, they're capturing our journalists, and you're just telling us we should go and swallow it. Of course, there are people like politicians like Trump who do not often care about these details, but even for him it might be difficult. It might be difficult to neglect that event. There was another serious step made by Russia today. They added Hungary to the list of non-friendly countries. So, what do you mean, Hungary? Yeah, Hungary. It's they added it to the list, saying that this is not friendly country anymore. And these maneuvers, they usually have consequences. So, if you called somebody non-friendly, it is not friendly, right? And now you have to vote or get some support from Europe. Hungary will not likely do that. And there would be questions, why are you even going to the country that considers you not friendly? I don't know if they're making an interesting, cunning maneuver here, but I think they're diminishing the space for maneuvering. And usually, if you're acting on the field, you want to expand your capability or your options. If you are diminishing them, that's a bad story. You're risking to fall into the funnel of catastrophes. But their steps are usually irrational. So they're rational from the wrong or non-factual viewpoint, but they're irrational in the actual world picture. It's like representative of one of the gymnastics teams from Russia said, the whole world is mad, only we are good. And that's how psychos think. They think that the whole world is insane and they're all the only sane ones. Oh, Olexiy, these sportsmen that play for Russia, for especially military clubs of Russia, sports clubs, they are a special breed. They are basically military servicemen in sports uniforms. So they're translating that message. All right. Next news, Xi Jinping is saying that he's preparing China for war. Foreign Affairs published in the United States. In March, Xi Jinping mentioned that war readiness aspect in 4 different speeches. And he mentioned that he might allow his generals to be brave enough to fight for the interests of his country. And they're writing new laws about military readiness. They're building new shelters not far from Taiwan area. And they're investing more money in the military in the country. For now, this is just a quote. It's difficult to say if it is a foregone conclusion that they will attack Taiwan, but something changed in Beijing. And if Beijing is saying that they're preparing for war, it would be silly to not believe them, concludes this article. So, what do you think in this light? In light of Xi Jinping's visit to Moscow, in light of him talking to Belarus, and that Macron and von der Leyen might visit him soon, and invite from Zelensky to visit Kiev. So, American message is that it's not related to Europe, that this is China's issue, and right, it's Taiwan, it's a matter of Taiwan. Indeed, in China they are tightening the nooses, they're tightening everything up and buttoning it up. A lot of people are leaving China because a lot of millionaires, billionaires, wealthy people are running from the country, they're fleeing it. And he needs to explain somehow what's happening, why people are doing that. You know, war is a good explanation, as good as any. It's a universal explanation. We're preparing for war, so some people are fleeing. They do not want to support our country to that degree. So, also, how do you explain new cadre decisions in the peaceful life? Party members, they're related to each other by different connections and all. And they will be asking questions. Why are we removing this figure? Why are we changing this general? Why are we changing this administration? And as a member of centralized authoritarian system, he is saying that, no, we are ready. Look, we are getting ready for war, and these people were voicing their opinion that war should not happen. They are of a different opinion. If he's a military general, we don't want him as a general because we want brave ones who will fulfill the orders. When he is turning to the military and saying, be brave to fight, it means, I think, that he'll be reformatting the army to match his aspirations. And military rhetoric covers that. I don't think Belarus is related to that, because in communique that they signed with Lukashenko, there is not going to be a nuclear conflict. They both are against nuclear conflict in Europe. And even when Putin spokesperson came out about the missiles and all and the nukes, China reacted almost immediately, coming out and saying, no, this is not a good direction. So I think this is a regional story that they're peddling. This is a Taiwan story. It is both the revenge and attempt to use the current situation that is unfolding in the United States with between Democrats and Republicans in America, but where the question of China is very important. It's number one, actually, in the political discussion. And China is hinting them that, look, we are strong, we will pay a big price for our interests, and he's trying to affect the position in the United States, in the world, and of course in the United States, first of all. Because the more you influence the public opinion, the easier it is to do it in negotiations. Because if there is a question, are you ready for war? A lot of people would answer, no, we're not. Right? Then we need to discuss, then we need to negotiate. So I think this is all rhetoric. But the only side factor is that such rhetoric during the unfolding biggest war since the Second World War, the rhetoric coming from the second powerful country in the world, it's not exactly a responsible thing to do. On the other hand, he needs to react to anti-Chinese rhetoric, right? He cannot stay mum because in the West and in United States, there is a lot of anti-Chinese sentiment. Also, the Union of Five Eyes, the position of Australia, he's being asked very difficult questions. Look, they're pressing us from different sides. What are we doing? He needs to demonstrate decisiveness and readiness. So far, it's just rhetoric. We'll see what happens later. All right. Reasonable. We're at 300,000. Over 110,000 clicked the like button, so we crossed our minimal threshold, the usual marker for our streams. Let's go further. You have visited Lithuania, right? Security summit there. In Lithuania, they're getting ready to adopt a law, I think either today. I didn't follow that situation. I was doing a lot of casting today, a lot of streaming. But this is an important law that touches upon the questions of accepting refugees from both Russia and Belarus. And their parliament has to take this vote on this, and this likely will block this opportunity for refugees to arrive to Lithuania. They will stop accepting them. Special Services of Lithuania has already made a statement that this likely will lead to a high degree of infiltration by FSB agents. They exist. Moscow is using the wave of immigration to flood the neighbor countries and further and remote countries with their agents, and they always do that. That's a standard procedure. But this law actually would block even giving refugees the status. I did talk to my Lithuanian friends there. They already got 86,000 of Belarus refugees there. Tikhanovskaya, Belarus president in exile, is already resisting this law. Of course, she is defending the interests of her countrymen, and Lithuania would not be taking this law without very serious reasons, because it's very close to the human rights, and I understand that special services need to provide very serious grounds for such a law. They will make a decision, but basically for 2 million of Lithuanian population, they already have 156 or 189,000 of Ukrainian refugees, 86 Belarus refugees, and tens of thousands of Russian refugees. I'm not ready to give an exact number. Just didn't remember that. I was mostly talking about Belarus topic there, but this creates a serious pressure, serious factor. Imagine that, okay, maybe just 50,000 of Russian refugees, or overall, if it's 150 of all the refugees, that's like 10% of population. That's a lot. It's a big pressure for a small country. If they're not creating jobs and for these people, and these people are not paying taxes, it's difficult to accommodate that. And then the question is, how many of them and to what degree are loyal? They actually asked me what criteria would I name. First, They would be paying taxes in Lithuania, not paying in Russia. The ones who are not doing any pro-Putin propaganda and who are making their position known straight and who are openly do not support and who openly attack Putin's regime. I think these would be the good criteria for people to allow into the country, because an open attack on Putin's regime is not a thing in Russia. You can get criminal prosecution for that. Of course, for agents, they might allow to say that, but that still would cut the base for possible Russian representatives or pro-Putin people among the newcomers to Lithuania. They actually showed me a window, a broken window they still keep. In 2016, those pro-Putin protesters actually were throwing stones at the parliament, and they want to preclude that information, that situation. They're basically trying to preclude these protests, and they're trying to make sure they can still keep their country under control. Knowing how special services work, know how our Lithuanian colleagues work, that without very serious grounds they would not bring this question to the parliamentary level, because it's very close to human rights. It's a very difficult question, especially Belarus neighbors are right there. So it means the situation is very serious. Okay, yeah, people are telling me 3 million is the population in Lithuania, but still 5%, that's a lot. That's a big share. And there are a lot of refugees indeed. I, went to several cafes and restaurants in Lithuania while I was there. You could hear from every other table there is a definite Moscow accent coming from conversations. Even on the social, being there, just interacting with people on the ground, you can already see that. But I suspect they have much more serious numbers than just my personal impressions. All right. So let's continue moving. Do you know that in Russia, on the 8th of April, there is a holiday? There is a day of recruiting, military recruitment office. I did not know that. Okay. So on the eve of that day, we already have super high statistics of setting the draft points, the draft places on fire. If you guys are in our chat and from different cities in Russia, just confirm or not if that military conscription point was set ablaze in your city or not yet. You think they will? You can link that to resistance to Putin's regime. Well, yeah, you did mention that there are some partisans, right? Your favorite word, that there are partisans in Russia that set recruitment offices on fire. Yes, it's a special day. And Putin today also signed a decree to draft 150,000 people this year. These are the ones who reached their 18th year, who can be mobilized now. And we already have dozens, many dozens of burnt drafting points in Russia. In Russia, that red fire is a symbol, so to say. We discussed how things set ablaze pretty often. It doesn't sparkle by itself, right? What do you think? I can only remotely sympathize with those people who work for drafting points, but they keep being attacked. Their buildings are being burnt. They need to continue drafting the new people. They need to explain why these newly mobilized need to become contractors. And then they also need to explain to these mobilized that they will be serving somewhere in Voronezh region, but then all of a sudden explain to their parents and relatives and to those people as well, what are they doing under Bakhmut on the second day after the draft. So yeah, they're in a very interesting predicament, and we can troll them here and congratulate them on the 8th of April. So if they'll be failing, if Russian troops will be failing on the front, do you think they, during the counteroffensive of Ukraine, do you think the newly mobilized will be newly drafted will be sent to the front? Yeah, I think they'll be sending everything they have and the sink, because they don't really have enough forces. I'm being told here in the chat, in the private message, that most of Legion of Russia resistance people are concentrating on railroads and logistic lines, but for the holiday they can switch their attention to the military recruitment offices. Yeah, okay. We have to cover a ton more subjects. Let's touch upon the president of Turkey, Erdogan, who said that there is a perspective to invite Putin to Turkey. And that's before elections, I think. This statement is not supported by anything else. I think it could be just Erdogan's play. That arrest order, Turkey, elections, and possible visit to Turkey, that's a big question. Actually, one of the Russian ambassadors was shot in Turkey not too long ago, and one of the cultural exhibits. So there's definitely a risk. What's happening in Turkey, one, I think Mark needs to understand in light of two big things. First of all, is that Turkey is one of the laundry countries for Russia, together with United Arab Emirates. That allowed them to do a lot of things to stabilize their internal currency, lira, and to revitalize their economy. And people fleeing to Turkey, they usually have money and some capability, so more people coming there, that actually is an influx of new technology and new capability. And Erdogan, from that angle, can show that, see, Putin is threatening everybody with nukes, but I somehow manage his agenda, so I can deal with him. That's plus point, right, to Erdogan's agenda, especially if he manages to get something from Putin as a concession. He promised that conversation on 27th of April, that's a couple of weeks before their election date in Turkey. If he gets a notable bonus or notable achievement out of this, he can present that as an additional point for his election. And the second one is a fight with China for the intermediary role in this conflict, because since the earthquake in Turkey, where they lost 50,000 people due to a natural catastrophe, China made big advancements in this field. And in Turkey, they had to react to the earthquake and the casualties. They had to arrest a few building companies, leaders of the heads of the building companies that did not build to the code, and that caused excessive victims. And then immediately after, they jumped back to the negotiation table because China is threatening to take away their leading role in this. And it's a good position to have, the intermediary in a big conflict. You get a lot of power. You actually get more access to both sides, and both sides are actually aiding the intermediary to achieve certain things because they're interested in getting their interests in the negotiations. And Lukashenko, remember, was at the brink of collapse as a regime, but when the questions of Russian-Ukrainian war were being decided at the same time, it's been, 8 years now since he suggested to use Minsk as a negotiating table. So he strengthened his position dramatically. Situation did change now, right? But until 2022, from 2015, he was running circles as an intermediary, and that gave him a lot of political fuel to continue working, to continue propping his regime. And of course, Turkey will continue doing that because that gives them a lot of new capabilities. That grain deal gives them ways to also sell it. And it's an influence in the Middle East. It's an influence in the North Africa region, so that's all the zone of their interests. And of course, the influence to European affairs. So this is a peculiar story, and they don't want to lose this capability. And the only way to not lose it is to continue working close and make sure that you invite both parties to his Eastern carpet to negotiate. And another one is that there is an Azerbaijan and Armenia. They're escalating in that corridor. So like a corridor where there is a military conflict brooding. Iran is also bringing some of their troops to the border, to the northern border. So for Erdogan, though, it is important to have Putin visit Turkey. Not Erdogan go to Moscow, but to have Putin visit Turkey. Do you think Putin will go? It's difficult to say what position he will be in. A lot of things can change during the month, but since he could be in military and political isolation, he might fret, he might actually go, because there's nowhere else to go, really. Armenia is adopting Roman statute. They quarreled with China. Africa is not a tasty proposition to go to, so nobody but Turkey is willing to receive them. Maybe they will. Interesting. So we've been live for 40 minutes. 323,000 are watching us. Let's go to a dessert. We'll show a stream now. The one that you published in your social and your Facebook. This is a success, I think. An hour and a half on the first TV channel in Moscow. They're telling about you, about the way you lick your lips. There is one probably gay commentator on that show who was really concentrated on how you're licking lips and why you're doing it and how many times a minute you do that. I will show a brief excerpt from this show, in the show of Maria Butina, who was previously imprisoned in the US for doing some political shenanigans. And she's now leading a video program on the first TV channel in Russia. And it's a surprising thing. While we're bringing it up to the screen, they went from some garbage propaganda early on in the war, like Arestovych is gay or something else. They started now switching the focal point to your life, to things around you. How some kid died next to you, how other events are unfolding next to you. And it's still trashy what they're doing. But I was trying to probe my other guests in the studio. It seems like audience in Russia is starting to react. It's reacting to YouTube, it's reacting to what we are doing here, and it seems like by the end of this year they'll try to block YouTube completely. They're already ordered equipment from China to afford that technical capability. And the question about this show is that they need to somehow discount, to somehow depress the interest in our show, in our stream. And their target audience is not even the Ukrainian audience, it's Russian audience, internal audience. They want them to stop watching us, basically. And there was the whole stream dedicated to us, mostly to you, but they did talk about our streams. Here it is. Of course, licking lips is the sign of lies. He's sticking it out so far because he's under psychological stress. When he is asked questions that he doesn't know how to answer, he licks his lips once every 5 seconds. He blinks every 1 second. His nervous system is very weak. What is an indicator of? These are signs of lies. Oh, it's an indicator of not enough water in the organism, so maybe he's abusing drugs. If you watch all the streams and if you watch how he talks in his seminars and his school, it's definitely a sign that he is in a different state of mind. He's always thirsty, speaking with the common language. Especially here, you can see here how he moves his hands, and he keeps drinking water during that seminar. And the way he's rubbing hands, that's called the syndrome of insects under the skin. Those people who take drugs, they often have that side effect, like they feel the insects crawling under the skin. So they're forced to rub their hands like this. We know one more personage who also likes, or maybe even two, who abuse drugs, or maybe even three. For example, I think of Zelensky immediately, or Hunter Biden, for example. So these people all have the same producer. So yeah, people are talking about that balding commentator, and I did like that red-haired with a short haircut somewhere in her climax. She, I think, is a good candidate for all kinds of experiments. Anyway, so these freaks worked for the whole hour and a half, got some money for that. But for the first channel in such a style, in such a freakish style, that's complete wilderness, right? You did mention that in your social when you forwarded that. You used an opportunity to troll them too. Mark, how much are an hour and a half of prime time on the first channel? Oh, this is a lot AF. This is millions of dollars. Some specialists told me it's somewhere between $3 to $7 million if it's direct advertising. So here's a question. What am I doing with them that they're eager to dump 3 to 7 millions to discuss how many times I lick my lips? I would say one needs to live in a way that your enemies in prime time would be discussing your person on their TV. That's a sign of success. By the way, in Ukraine, we have different people. There are some people who are picking this up and saying on the banners and saying, look, that's what they're talking about. It's politics. It's not too many of them, right, Olexiy? Yeah, right. And also another side of these ones are saying that Arestovych is not doing anything. Guys, when you will be doing nothing so effectively that you'll be given an hour and a half in the prime time of the country aggressor, then we'll address this matter, dear political opponents. So definitely they are attacking our influence on the Russian audience. We cannot explain it in any other way. To break through on the prime time on the first channel and your face for an hour and a half, your mug on the central TV, well, thank you for advertising. Especially, I like that they talked about my courses, my school, Iperon, right? Yes. Not that I owe them, but I'm grateful for them bringing it up as well. Thank you for the advertising of my seminars. Come again. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're either going in the degrading slope. They're starting with some just fakes earlier last year. Now they're finishing it with a weird freak show. And that is being interchanged with the PSYOP as well, right? That earlier attack on you this year, and that somehow works. People think that their target is to drop the level of trust to our channel. Of course, Mark, because when counteroffensive will start, our audience will definitely increase. Yeah, that little baldy there was saying, do you know how many streams, how many people are watching their streams? Do you know how many people are watching them live? And yeah, Mark, that our numbers will swell, especially from Russia. There'll be, of course, people watching from Ukraine and abroad, but there'll be people watching from Russia who will be interested to see what's happening with their husbands and brothers and sons. What is happening to the leopards on the front and where they're being destroyed. So they're trying to discount our influence on that channel. I think this is our joint achievement, of course, because to show, yeah, they're funny. They're showing both of us there. That's definitely an attraction to the show. And they did show you there as well, right? Yeah, they did. They had a whole other separate show about me even before that on the first channel. But I'm a different figure because I am the one who'll bring it up and I'll dedicate the whole stream to that and I'll be trolling them, right? And I'm definitely a polite person, because otherwise I would be telling them to F off in my live streams. But that's definitely an acknowledgement. Mark, tell me one thing. After 30 years of Putin's reign, let's put it no, let's put it in 30 years of independent Russia, after USSR, has anybody been given an hour and a half of prime time? Probably some stars. But as for political enemy, and go through licking his lips and blinking and schools and all, yeah, I think it's rare. Let me turn to them. I think they're watching. Dear friends, thank you for high marks, high grades given to my work. Of course, my compatriot citizens can have qualms with me, and it's difficult to see profit among your neighbors, but when my enemies are showing me for an hour and a half in prime time, I do acknowledge that probably I work not in vain. All right, so we've been live for about 15 minutes. We'll show you one more thing at the end. Wife of one of the servicemen had turned to us. He lost his arm, and her name is Alla Nesterenko, his wife. He also lost his vision. He cannot see now as a result of a trauma during sustained during the fight with the Russian foes in the front. Here are his bank details. If any of you can support, I understand there's something they could do with crystal replacement in the eyes, and he's a young guy, but if something can be worked to give him at least partial vision back, that's important. And they're a young couple. They look lovely. I understand if they can get some help from you guys who are viewing this video, that would be fantastic. We understand there are thousands and thousands of victims of war like that, but if they got into our limelight, please help them. We'll send some monies, proceeds from our merchandise store, but if you can also send them support directly, please do that. That is important. And we'll let you know in the next streams. So, once again, if you have this capability to either help him financially or maybe help them with the proper clinic and arrangements there, maybe some discount service. They are now living in Kiev and they're getting treatment there, so our merch store is at the bottom with a description of that stream. There are usually a bunch of t-shirts and other things. Everything that we get from this store are being sent to victims of this war that we highlight on these streams. So all that goes to support those people who need it. Especially, and without eyes, it's a bad proposition to live on this world, so if we can help, that'd be great. Mark, by the way, 9 explosions in the center of Belgrade in the chat. Yeah, they're saying it's in the skies, but just bring it up just in case people would accuse us that we are shooting at the center of the city. Oh, you and me? No, I'm in Ukraine, but in Belgrade there are a lot of military objects, so it's war, Olexiy. How did they plan otherwise, right? Using the chance, I'm gonna say also that right now there is a flock of Shahids going to Kiev. They started Bryansk and they're en route, so we're giddily, in quotes, waiting for them here. But yeah, we are not hitting civilian targets. If anything explodes near Belgrade, first of all, it's not us. Second, there are a lot of military objects in the center of that city. All the questions to those who placed their military installations there. All right. We'll have things to discuss on Saturday, right? Yep, the day after tomorrow. We'll try to keep schedule. All right, so don't miss that. 10 p.m. Kiev, same 10 p.m. Moscow. We'll gather together and discuss it. Perhaps there'll be more news-worthy things to address from the first channel by those idiots. So we'll keep you entertained. Thank you, Olexiy. Thank you, viewers. We'll see you on Saturday. See you then.